In this episode of the Android Camera 2 video application, we're actually going to be capturing the still image while in the preview capture session. Welcome to Mobile Application Tutorials. My name's Nigel, and as mentioned in the introduction, we're going to be capturing still images. Very similar, or basically the same as what we did in the original Android Camera 2 API camera application. So let's make a start. First thing we want to do is to create a folder, a unique folder to put our images. These will be separate from where we put our movies, just to allow for ease, and we're going to put these in the generic pictures folder. And we're also going to create unique file names for the images as well. So let's make a start. Okay, so I can copy a fair bit of code here. So as you can see, I've got members for the video folder and video file name. I'm just going to copy these two and create the equivalent named ones for images. So I just got to change, I'm just going to change the name video to images. Or image folder. An image file name. Okay, the next thing is we've got two methods. One method is where we actually create the folder, and another method is where we create the unique file names. So again, I'm just going to copy those from the ones that have already been set up for video. So I have to find those first. So here it is here, create video folder. And I can just copy those. Okay, and I'll just move down here. And again, it's just changing the name here. Got to be very careful when you're copying methods. You've got to be very careful that you do copy everything there. If you leave one thing out, you can have some nasty sort of troubleshooting issues. So let's just change this to create image folder. And again here we're just going to be changing the names here. Image file. And at the end here we've got movies. I'm going to change that to pictures. As such, and we've got more naming to be changed here. Change the video folder to image. And change that name of movie file to image file. Right, the next part just here, camera 2 video image, I'm going to keep that name as is because that represents the application name. That just means that this folder name is going to be in the directory pictures, and that sort of just makes sense to me to have the same sort of application name in the video folder and the pictures folder. And we'll go down here and just fix these last names. And I think that's okay for the image folder. Now we've got to go down to the next method for the create video file and change that to image. Timestamp looks okay, we can keep that as is. And we're going to change video to image. And video file, we should change that to image file. And also key thing here, this file's been appended with MP4. We want to change that to JPG. And we need to change the M video folder to M image folder. Just double checking the name here. Okay, change the video file name. Image. Fix that to image file. And we'll be returning the image file. And just let me take a couple of seconds just to double check that everything's okay here. I don't want any the words video sort of being in there. Okay, that looks okay to me. Okay, the next step here is to actually call the create image folder, and that's going to happen in the same place where we create the video folder here. So let's put that underneath here, create image folder. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create a still capture request on our preview session. So we'll create a method for that. So let me try and find a good place to do that. I'm probably going to do it near there where we create the sessions. So let's find the methods here. So let me put that below the start preview. And I'll put start still capture request. Okay, now we need to set up the request for that. We do have a capture request builder we can use for that. Let's first of all recreate that for the still images. So again, we're now going to need to call the member camera device and create a capture request. And in this case, it's going to be the template still capture. Okay, it needs a try catch harness around that. Okay. Next step here is to add the ImageReader surface that we created in the previous tutorial. We'll add that to this request. Add target. So if we do member ImageReader, and we can get the surface from that. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our own capture callback for the session for this to be written into. And the main reason for to use this callback is once we've started capturing the image, we're going to create our file this to be written into. So if we call the camera capture session and then capture callback, and I will call this still capture callback. Hopefully that's explanative enough. And we'll complete that. And I just want onCapture started. When we start the capture, we'll provide the file name to be written to at a later stage. Basically, this gets called once we're focused. We don't want to sort of create an image if we haven't got focus, because we can sort of create empty image files. So this is probably quite a logical place to actually create our file name here. And from here we can create our file name, create image file name. And again, we're going to have to put a try catch harness around that. And complete this call. Okay, so we've done two things in this method. One, we've set up our capture builder with the right settings, mainly the ImageReader surface. And we've also set up our own capture callback. So now from our preview session, we can create a capture with these values. So let's call preview capture session. This is going to be a single capture. We can now pass on our CaptureRequestBuilder called build. So we've got that now. Now we can pass in our still capture callback. And this start still capture request actually gets called on the background thread. It gets called from the, let me see if I can find it. It gets called from the It gets called in the preview capture session callback here. And so this is already getting called on the background handler. In fact, we can go and call it now. Start still capture request here. So this is actually being called on the background thread. So we can, when we're calling inside the background thread, we'll just set the thread to null. In other words, carry on executing on the same thread. So let's go back to that line. We can just go into that. So in here we can just make this null because we're already in the background thread. Okay, that's all we should need to do for the start still capture request. Okay, there's one other thing I need to add here, and I'm going to add it just before I add the target here. It's quite possible that with some devices, including the Series 5X, Nexus 5X, that the orientation might be skewed, and so we can actually fix that. From one of the earlier tutorial series on this, on the camera2 video application, we already did a fix for the orientation, and so we've got actually a rotation member that's got the right value for our rotation, so we can feed that into this request as well. So basically, if we call it CaptureRequestBuilder, and basically we're going to call a set on here. I'm going to need to call CaptureRequest here. And we've got the JPEG orientation here. And we've got, from the previous tutorial, you all have to look back if you can't remember this, we've got this member here that holds the correct orientation value. So we can just feed that into there. Now if we don't, especially for the Nexus 5X, I will get my images skewed, I think about 270 degrees. So on a, it'll be on a horizontal. So this will fix that for these particular devices. So it's a good idea to put the orientation fix in our capture request. Okay, we've now got everything set up to actually capture an image and get it put onto the camera device, the image reader plane. But we want to get it. We now need to get it from the image reader plane across and store it into memory. We have to do that in code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a runnable class to run on its own thread to actually write the data from the image reader into memory, into storage. And we've got the file name representing that as well. So let's do that now, create that. I'm going to call it image saver class. So I'm going to put it below the implementation of the image reader. So put it down here. And this is going to be a class, and I'll call it image saver, and implements a runnable. Okay, so we've got a bit of work here. I'm going to click implement methods and implement the run. I'm also going to implement the constructor as well. Right, I'm going to create an image member inside this class, and this is going to be where the images actually get stored. I'll call it member image. And let me make that final, private final. Okay, and inside a constructor here, we're going to be passing it the image. And so we can initialize that member image with the image provided to us when we call it. Okay, that's now set up. Now let's go inside our run owl. Okay, we're going to set up a byte buffer. I'll just call it byte buffer. And we're going to populate that with the image from our image variable that we would have set up in the constructor. So if we call our member image, get planes. On the first plane, 0, get the buffer, which holds all our image data. Okay, now I want to create a byte array to fill all that data into. I'll call it bytes. And to work out the size of that, we can call byte buffer and call the remaining method on that, just to create the proper size for our bytes array. Right, now we can put the data into our bytes array by calling byte buffer. Get, and just pass in bytes. Okay, so the bytes array now holds all the data representing the image. Now the next step here is to put those bytes into our file. In other words, put it into the camera storage. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have to create a file output stream. I'll just call it file output stream. Initially set that to null. And now we can set up a file output stream pointing to the file that we want to save it to. And let's pass in our image file name. And I do have to put a try catch around this. I just want to call one more line and then put the harness around both those lines. Okay, so with our file output stream, it's just a matter of writing that with the data of our bytes array. Okay, well now we need to put a try catch harness around that. Oh, that's one of the bugs within Android 2.0. I have to press the downwards arrow. I can't complete it by pressing keys. So I'm going to select try catch finally. We need to use the finally to clean up the resources that we created in this runnable. Okay, so just to reiterate, we've created a file output stream with the file name to actually store the image data to, and we do the right there now. Okay, and then finally we need to do the cleanup. Okay, so the first thing, let's clean up the image first and call close on that. Now let's do a check to see if we've got any data in our file output stream. In other words, if it's not equal to null. We'll just call file output stream and close on that. And again, we need to put a try catch harness around there. Okay, and that should be that for the image saver runnable. Now we need to call that an image saver runnable, and it gets called from when ImageReader.OnImageAvailableListener. So once the ImageReader has got an image, full image, the OnImageAvailableListener gets called, and we can now call our runnable to save that to our storage. So inside the OnImageAvailableListener here, callback, we'll call the background thread. Remember background thread, background handler, and we're going to post it to that runnable. It's called post. Now we can create our new image saver, and we're going to have to pass in the reader, and we'll call acquire latest image. So the image reader is going to supply us with the latest image. We'll pass that into the constructor as an image into our image saver here, and we're just going to post it onto the background thread by calling the background thread handler post. Okay, that's all we should need to do. So the next step here is to try running it and see what happens. Okay, you wouldn't have seen what happened then, but I was running on Android Studio 2.0 and I tried to record what was happening on my display. It completely doesn't work, so I've now switched to Android 1.5 again because I want to show you recording on what's happening on the display as well. That's quite an important part of my tutorials. So anyway, let's try running this in Android 1.5. Application's now started, so let me click on record Let's start recording the display so you can see what's happening. Okay, so basically I'm just going to capture a single image here. Autofocus is locked. Now let me switch to File Explorer here. Now this was empty before, trust me, it was empty. And let's view that image. And there we have the image viewed there. So that was happening on the preview capture session. We've successfully done this. The following tutorial we're going to actually be capturing this on the record capture session, but we're going to be using virtually identical methodology to implement that. So that completes this episode where we successfully captured a still image in the preview capture session. We will be in the following tutorial doing the same again, but we'll be doing that in the record capture session. In other words, while you're recording, you still capture image frames from the video itself. Anyway, that concludes this episode. If you want to get notified of the next episode in this tutorial series or any of the other videos that I'm working on, don't forget to click on that subscribe button down below. And surrounding me is all my social media accounts. You can click on those if you're viewing this from a PC. So I do notify any announcements such as new videos, bug fixes, articles, etc. They all get notified on social media, so it's a good idea just to subscribe to those accounts just to be updated with the latest news of what's happening in the world of mobile application tutorials. And don't forget, directly above me is a link to my website as well. And so with each one of these videos there's a corresponding article that matches those. And not only does it have the video, it's got the description of the code changes as well as the details of where you can get the code from GitHub. Anyway, that's it for this one. Bye for now.